Advent is a time of watching and waiting for the coming of the Messiah. Messiah means anointed one in Hebrew. The unexpected part of this equation is that God came to earth in the form of a baby, who we know as Jesus. The anticipation of being saved, pulled out of oppression, lifted up, and all the inequities of the world made right is the angst of Advent. As we watch and wait, we'd like to look at some of the music of Advent, which speaks to our scriptures, emotions, spirituality, and the reality of God in our lives. Music speaks.
This is a podcast created and produced by Powell United Methodist Church in Powell, Ohio. Welcome to the season of Advent.
Welcome to week 1 of Watching and Waiting, our podcast. I'm Kim LaRue, Director of Adult Ministries.
And I am Rachel Parfinchuk, Director of Music Ministries. And we are going to be looking at the music of Advent this week. And today we will be focusing on the song Gabriel's Mesage, arranged by David Wilcox.
And I'm not familiar with this, Rachel, but it is stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely beautiful.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the music and what things you want us to be aware of as we listen to this beautiful piece.
So this piece is based on the story of Mary. So we're kind of learning about, as the angel Gabriel tells Mary that she is going to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the basis of this piece. And the melody is actually a traditional Basque carol. So it's from a long time ago, and then as it was passed down, then eventually we wrote it down, and we have this beautiful arrangement.
The arrangement I think that people are going to hear is from a choir in England, probably Oxford or somewhere, and it's ethereal. I'm sure it was recorded in a cathedral, and it's just stunningly beautiful. As Rachel said, this Luke passage about Mary, as you walk through the verses of this hymn, again called Gabriel's Mesage. So the focus is on what is Gabriel saying to Mary. And he starts talking about the fact that she is going to be the mother of Emmanuel, of God with us, and that she responds in this very meek way. And Rachel, I noticed through all of these verses, there are 4 verses to this that we have here, there's this piece at the end that always says, most highly favored lady, Gloria. In every single verse it says that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that musically, or what's that doing?
So musically, we would consider that somewhat of a refrain, where we have, the different verses telling the story, and then at the end always coming back to this same message, which is the most highly favored lady and Gloria. So that's kind of our theme throughout all of it, despite the changing of the text.
Yeah. And the other thing that I felt like was really powerful about this is this interplay between the holy and the earthly, or earthy even, this connection between Gabriel the angel and Mary the lowly servant girl or poverty-stricken woman, young woman, and just this back and forth between the two. Every single verse has an aspect of that holy and earthy, which I love because it speaks to the partnership between God and us, and how we're participating in what God's doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that too as well, because musically, aside from the interplay of these 2 themes that you're talking about, we also have an interplay of changing meter. So we start the measure in 9/8, and then we move over to 12/8, and it alternates measures. So it kind of gives you this feeling of almost kind of unease, because the meter doesn't stay the same the whole time. And you would probably imagine that might be some sort of reflection on how Mary may have felt when she was delivered this message.
Yeah, that's really cool that the person that wrote the music would have thought of that.
Yeah,
back and
perhaps.
forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the text has been connected to that also. I love how all of that works together. It's interesting to me how texts and music come together, because they're not always done at the same time, right? They're not always, like in this case, this is a really old tune, right? That was written to later, or do you think it was, do we have evidence that it was done at the same time? Do we know?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And so I want to go back to this idea of Emmanuel, which is one of the words in the text here. And Emmanuel means God is with us. And that's one of the reassurances that we have as we move toward this idea of a Messiah coming, and in the form of a human form, as opposed to of God coming down and smiting everything or bringing fire down on everything. It's a baby who comes. And as we read the stories of Jesus, we know that Jesus is kind of countercultural, not really what they expected in a Messiah. So this is another really cool thing about this. It's kind of showing us that also. I think if you want to look up the scriptures that this refers to, you'd go to Luke in the first chapter, and you'll see these characters show up there, Mary and Gabriel. And the pieces that are pulled out in the text are also coming straight out of Scripture. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Rachel, is there anything else we want to know about this as we listen to it?
Well, musically, there's a couple things, aside from the changing meter, which, I kind of alluded to earlier, which the fun thing about pieces like this is, as musicians, I don't know necessarily what the composer was intending, but we can make these assumptions, and the reality is whether or not that's correct, to me, that's what I receive. So the cool thing about music is sometimes, no matter what the composer was really intending, what really matters is the way you're receiving it. So just thought I'd throw that out there,
I love that.
just to think about. But another thing that I noticed in this piece is that it's a 4-part vocal harmony. So we've got, our sopranos, our altos, our tenors, and our basses. Except the only vocal part that actually gets to sing the text are the sopranos. Everybody else is either on ah or ooh or humming as the accompaniment, essentially. And so this is the case throughout the entirety of the hymn, except for the very end, where everybody comes together and sings Gloria. Now, I do not imagine that is an accident.
Yes, that is probably on purpose.
So I think that's another interesting thing to point out and to really show that, the text really does drive the meaning of the piece, and you can find a lot in that. So.
And I think one of the takeaways that we can have by listening to this and thinking about all of this, the way the music was written, the way the text has been put together, is that we might also be in partnership with God, right? We are also people that God comes to in some way. Maybe not the angel Gabriel, molting on our living room floor, but somehow God comes to us through a nudge or a voice or another person or possibly a vision. And maybe you do have an experience of an angel. And all of those things are God wanting us to be in relationship with God and to be doing God's work in this world, which is really uplifting when you think about even us. Even we are called by God to do amazing things. And God calls us out of our lowly places, whatever those are. Yeah. This is a beautiful, beautiful hymn. I'm so glad you knew about it so that we can talk about it. And we have a link for you all to listen to it, so you'll be able to hear it, and you can look up the text to it also so that you're getting the full experience of it. So we're glad you were with us today. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you're enjoying this extra music during the Advent season. And Rachel, I'm so glad that you were willing to do this with me, because it's such a fun thing to have a conversation about music.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you for everyone for listening.